Hey, what's up? So I'm not sure if this is connected everywhere yet, but we'll see how it goes. Hi. How's it going? It's been a crazy month, and more crazy than I expected it to be. And so I'm kind of finding myself in this place where I was focused all of March on like finding employment. February was kind of focused on getting a Git course out on Epic Web, and but honestly, all of this time I wasn't really planning on doing any of that. I was supposed to be kind of I was planning on continuing my work in storybook land, building out courses and all that kind of stuff. And so I have this talk that I'm giving. And while I have all of the pieces and the intent kind of mapped out, I have a bunch of notes. I wanted to do a couple things today. I have about an hour before I have my next meeting. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of go through that together because, I'll be on stage in like a couple days. Yeah, so I think my goal today is to kind of come up with the key points that I want to share no matter what, and then kind of augment it with various things as I am able to with time. One of the things is I do love having a repo that kind of goes with things, so I might kind of build up a repo for that as we're going through this. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. This is a very casual thing, open to questions. We're just going to develop this talk. Now, so let's dive in. I have some notes in this file right here already. The talk title itself is Snapshot-Driven Development, Capture Visual Tests in Flow. Now, this is kind of two-part. And I guess actually here, let's go into this. So what does component-driven development mean in the age of full stack components? How can we capture critical tests, testing data as we develop components, flows, and applications? In this talk, we'll break down what Storybook gets right and how Epic Stack can create better snapshot-driven DX. Okay. So there's a little bit of history here, and I'll probably like take notes while I enumerate that history. Let's get a section here with today's date. What is it? It's the 4/8/2020. Okay, so and we'll just kind of talk through some of this. One of the things. So something that people might not know is that when I was hired on to Chromatic, the purpose of my job was to, I guess, bring bring Storybook to the web developer market. And this is kind of interesting. So we'll call this Storybook to web devs, specifically UI developers. Now, this has a little bit of history in that Storybook is very... people who build design systems and component libraries are all very familiar with Storybook. However, it's never really caught on with web developers. And I wanted to kind of figure out why. Like, was it an API issue? Was it what was it, right? Now, there's a little discrepancy in kind of like what my job actually was, because I think that ultimately the thing that kind of broke everything was the expectation is that I would just funnel it to web developers, as opposed to discover why it isn't working. Good at the why, bad at the funneling. And so in that, I gave a number of talks. I'll probably find those. I gave a number of talks, and honestly, the whole YouTube channel was based around educating people around the APIs that you had to build components. Now, I think that Storybook has actually built a very interesting testing solution. And I'll tell you why. So CSF3 specifically is very interesting because it has this really cool object syntax. And let's see if we can find something for that. Heck yeah, you get to see behind the scenes. You're gonna see kind of what it comes into after after we actually like do this. But yeah, sneak peek for Wednesday. Um, which I'm pumped on. We're gonna have so much fun. Okay, so let's get a new tab open here, and let's see, uh, youtube.com nope, not that one. We're gonna go to Chromatic UI. If YouTube decides to load, it might be kind of pissed because I'm streaming. It's confused. It doesn't know what to do when I'm using upload and download at the same time. Okay, so let's jump into videos. There are a couple videos that I think are particularly relevant. So there's component testing with Justin. This is one of my favorite videos that I have ever made. It has an interesting, I think the volume's off, so we won't go in there. But I run through the tic-tac-toe example and we build component tests around it. And I'd love to find a way to incorporate this video into it. And maybe it's just kind of like, I talk through it, grab some screenshots and whatnot. But I think this is an important concept. And the reason it's important is because it showcases just how good Storybook is at capturing the development process. So we go from, let's see. So we go from just a default game board here. Oop, nope, that's just me talking aggressively. So we go from a default game board, we can apply various states. So we're seeing, applying various states. We go all the way through to getting user events and then applying those user events through, or that state through user events, which is a completely different type of testing, something that I think is critical for UI development. And so we built the story about how the game is actually played instead of just passing props of like, there's an X here, there's no here, there's an X here, there's an O here. And this is important. This is how people use components, and this is like a type of testing that we don't have. I'm not going to say we don't have answers to, because this is an answer to it. Playwright is an answer to it. Cypress is an answer to this. I'm going to do all of these. So ideas in the space. Playwright, SB, Cypress, etc. Now, so what I want to get at is that this syntax that exists inside of Storybook, I think, is genius. Like truly genius. So I'm gonna put this here. CF3 is genius. I don't think that there is a better way to write UI driven tests than CSF3. It has the single best authoring experience that I've ever experienced. Which raises the question, like, why don't devs want this, right? I guess another one is like, so JS DOM. And I'm going to say this is kind of like the old way, because we all know that this is not using a real browser is not actually doing the thing that you want to test. So the difference is, like, why do I love this so much and kind of a little bit low-key hate all of these other options? I think a big part of it is like Just Sachs, I think, put it the most poignantly. I've had various terminologies for this, but it's like the second environment problem, I think is what she said. I think that's what it is. And so it's only a problem for devs, right? If you're in design systems, uh, you're probably in your own tooling anyway. So you got Figma, and then like Storybook, right? If you're just building the component library part of that, that's going to be in Storybook. Or something else, right? Like Ladle. Now, I think that like this experience is bad for developers though, because you end up having this whole Storybook sidecar process. Let me make sure I got things. Broadcast. Hello, object. I'm enjoying your software and game development stream. Well, thank you. Probably a bot, but you know, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Bots are bots are sentient too. Let's see. I'm here. I'm here for it, man. I appreciate the public prep. It's nice to see how pros like you prep. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is fun. I've always enjoyed kind of like prepping in public because you honestly, some of the best diversions in my talks have always been from suggestions from people saying like, have you thought about it like this? Have you tried this? And like, so it's really great. It's really virtuous. So yeah, so let's see what we got. So yeah, so this is it. I love this. You can write all of your interactions this way. They compose really well. Actually, that's a really important thing that I'd like to cover is like the killer features. So CSF3, let's call this killer features. I'm gonna say composition. Composition is a really cool thing. So like I have this, so we'll just kind of look at this code that we have right here. We have this story for the X wins case. And it has a play function which runs through the whole thing. It gets the canvas. Let's see, find by position, right? I have some labels in there that I'm using, and then I going and click each of these individually to get the X wins case. Cool. The cool thing is that if I wanted to do like an O wins case, I can compose these together. Actually, O wins is probably like a bad example of this, but I can compose these together by spreading out this play function over another story. So maybe the way that I would think about this is I would take off this last case right here, the winning case, and maybe save this as a replayable snippet for each section, and then just play the winning play, I guess, over in each of the individual X wins and O wins stories. I know it's very theoretical. Sorry, I don't have like a lot of stuff in place right now because we're prepping. But yeah, so that's so maybe like a better. We're gonna go back out here and say examples. I really think the tic-tac-toe example is good. Additionally, I am planning on building up some kind of like course material for Epic Web, like a workshop. I think tic-tac-toe, there is already a module in Epic Web or Epic React for tic-tac-toe, and so this I think would pair really nicely with that. So I like the idea of going through the tic-tac-toe example. Let's see. What? Anthony, hey, good to see you. Yo. Hey, are you going to be at Epic Web Conf or React Miami this year? I'd love to see you. That'd be awesome. What is CS? Oh, sad. No. Oh. Yeah, that was me last year. I didn't do any comps last year. You know, sometimes you got to take a break. I'm glad that you are. But yeah, maybe we'll see one next time. Are you done for good, or are you just kind of taking a break? I'm gonna jump into this. This is a great jumping off question. Let's see. So CSF3. Whoops, that's not gonna work. Always like like so in it. Hey, look, that's me. Hey, and Amy Dutton. Very cool. Good people here. If I do say so myself. Let's see. So storybook format 3. Okay, so that's the blog post. Probably not the best resource for us. There's gotta be. Oh man. Okay, here we go. CSF. And then this will default to 3 because that's the current default. If you're in one of these, if you're in version 8 and whatnot. Okay, so version 8. So I can link to this. What is CSF3? Okay, so CSF3 is an authoring format for stories in Storybook. However, it is like independent of Storybook. So if we go to there isn't a lot of work here, but let's see, component-driven.org, I think is what it is. Component-driven.org, yes, okay. If you go to component-driven.org, you go to the GitHub, there is a repository for CSF, and it's just kind of a small set of helper functions that you could use to build kind of build your own storybook, I guess. Here, let me hide this now. Yeah, yeah. I tried to Google it. Yes, that is actually one of the things that is like surprisingly difficult about storybook concepts, and one of the reasons that we did the YouTube channel is that it was really hard to find information about like what these things were, because you might have like the GitHub repo or like a migration doc and all that kind of stuff, and all of these things are really important, but like I feel like we never really got our hand on how to connect people to the right documentation at the right time. And it's still something that's like a little bit elusive to me. I'm not really sure the best way to do it, how to manage your SEO and get everyone pumped to the right place. Okay, cool. So this is CSF3. Good call. I'm gonna add that to my notes here. So yeah, so CSF3. Now let's get back to what it is. So there's a handful of functions in here, and what it does is it's a like module syntax. So like using ESM, and then it has this kind of like interpretation. Like, so it'll take the way that you have exported things inside of the module and then use those to assume stories. So, and we think of stories as like kind of like discrete states of things, like a discrete state of UI. So actually, these are some important terms to fill in, I think. So I'm going to start a new section here so terminology. So story is one, CSF is one. I think story without, this isn't a term, without storybook. So I'm kind of curious. I'd love to know how this would land with you, but like something that I'm thinking about, something that I found myself saying a lot was this idea of stories without storybook. Like, what does that look like? What does it look like to kind of pull out the nugget of like UI testing and this like these ergonomics that we've created around authoring tests, interactive tests. So these ergonomics that we've created around interactive tests, like how do we take those and just kind of like make them universal? Now, I'm going to start another portion of like, or I'm not going to call these stories because stories is overloaded in this context. So we'll call this anecdotes. So it's going to be like my job at Storybook So that's what we started with today. There's still more there to cover. Um, I think that's one. I think another story is like what Astro kind of taught me about what I wanted from Storybook. And I guess let's dive into that topic. So, sorry, this is like full on mind map all over the place. So if you're trying to follow along and it's like hella confusing, it is hella confusing. That's part of the process for me. But if you have questions, happy to kind of like go in and like make sure that whatever we're talking about is covered. Okay, so what Astro taught me. So if you're not familiar, Astro is this really cool framework. I'm sure that you've heard of it at this point. Still learning some of these keyboard shortcuts for Arc. Astro is this really cool framework. It has its own. It has a lot of its own ideas, right? And one of those is a templating language. So there's a .astro file, and so as I started to like kind of get more and more excited about like what Astro was doing, I and building up my own personal site. So chan.dev, I rebuilt in Astro. I wanted to use Storybook for interactive components. Now, there's a few things that stand in the way. And so one of those is that you have to like pick a framework for Storybook. So you can't document multiple frameworks inside of a single Storybook. It doesn't work that way. It has to be like React, Vue, web components, etc. And it will only and forever be that unless things change dramatically. And so that's kind of a problem in something like Astro that allows you to build components in however you want, in many languages simultaneously. Second of all, there was no like .astro file support, so I couldn't document the components that I was building. I would have to build them in like React and kind of continually rely on that server rendering or pre-rendering feature of Astro. So that's kind of a bummer as well. And so what I ended up doing, and I don't have any of this public because I never got to a place that I was like comfortable with, and so I kind of eventually just deleted the branch and decided that I would start over if I ever wanted to. Was using CSF directly. Now again, CSF is just a module format with a handful of functions around it. So pretty quickly, I was able to add some like .stories files to my .stories files into my my kind of like into my application, and then use some of these functions to actually have those render as like sub pages inside of my Astro app. So this was something like it would look like, my page path / stories would show up like in development. Oh no. Yeah, I hear that. Yes. I know. I'm in the kind of a similar but different outcome where I'm giving these talks, even though I'm not at the company anymore. So yeah, sorry to hear that. Yeah. How are things going now? Okay, so this is kind of the idea that we would have these, and so blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that got me thinking that maybe Storybook I don't know, tries too hard. Yeah, like maybe Storybook tries too hard, right? And that the right level or layer of integration is CSF. Now, why is that? Why? Because always and forever, Storybook has had this problem where it is a separate process. And this goes back to the, the second environment problem, right? So I'm going to draw that line back through that, right? Second environment problem. Second environment problem is that like we now have to like mirror our dev environment. And this can't happen without a ton of effort. And effort kind of in the wrong direction, right? So like why do I want to recreate Next.js? Also, what happens when Next.js moves from Webpack to TurboPack? It's a good question. You know, how do we support new unknown things like Astro? And I think this whole area just kind of got me thinking that this is a problem that like it's a exponential problem. It's exponentially growing as the ecosystem grows. And so if we wanted to use CSF, what does it look like what are the core things that we need to implement, I guess, in order to get that? So let's see, what do we have? We have about 30 minutes. We got plenty of time. It's good. It was a tough choice, but ultimately the right one. Good. I'm glad. You know, honestly, quitting is so hard to do. Especially, I'm sure that it played into it that, you know, the industry is just weird right now. Like it's really hard to kind of jump ship on something. And also like when the industry is weird and kind of learning new things and I don't know, all that stuff. It's pretty rough. But yes, I've been in that place and it is rough. And I'm glad that you made the right decision, despite it being challenging. No.astro. Unfortunately, for those reasons, I'm out. Yeah, no, totally. Same. I 100% agree. And the problem there is it's like, okay, well, whose job is it? It's like, okay, well, because I'm interested in Astro, now it becomes like my job, as opposed to just being able to lean on Astro, the framework. Like that seems like a weird concession to make for me. In choosing a UI documenting tool, right? Maybe that's what's weird. Maybe that's like concerns. Choose a framework seems like a weird constraint when choosing tool. Yeah, that is very much a thing that I felt all the time, actually. What's up? Man, Ben Holmes and Anthony. This is amazing. I never responded to your Discord message. I have not opened Discord in a while, so I am sorry. And also, it's not personal. My apologies. Let me know if you want to stream. Oh, Ben not Chan. Okay, cool. I'm just like participating in someone else's conversation now. Awesome. I'm sorry, Anthony. We're all just ghosting you. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. You and me both. You and me both, Ben. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. Um. Okay. So yes. So that was one of my biggest concerns. Is like I didn't want to have to choose a like I want to be able to document UI, and so like part of this is like no reusability, right? So like one of the beautiful things about CSF is that I'm using testing library, which it adapts to frameworks, but is a language that like just works and operates at a level that is independent of the components. Um, so I should be able to reuse all of these, even if I swap out the component that's under test, or the library of the component under test. See, this is why I have to do this, because it's like could any one of these tracks could be the 15-minute talk that they want from me. And so it's like, oh, I could just stand up there and just complain about things for like 15 minutes, but I want to make sure that it's like meaningful. Um, so yeah, okay, so no reusability between blah 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 blah, etc. Okay, so we're kind of like locked in. That's a bummer, because it means that like we're always like kind of beholden to what the storybook team is able to prioritize, or the storybook community. Um, and like I want to be careful here, because I I recognize I don't know, this is maybe like a sub rant. I'm just not a code contributor. Like, yeah, I'm just not. I I love code. I love reading it. I can write it. I can understand it. But I have never really contributed more than bug fixes to open source libraries that I like. My contributions are more in the communication of APIs, like the ideas, how to use things, doing that, in little things like, the stream or on video. Like that's the type of thing that I like to do. And those are the types of contributions that I tend to make. And so like there's an acceptance part of this, like for me, where I felt bad, where it's like, oh, okay, well, if I care about Astro, like I should be the one to contribute that, right? Like I'm perfectly capable of making it happen. I should do that. I just don't want to. It's just not. It's not what gets me excited. And so I don't know. There's sometimes this like open source guilt. It's like, oh, if you care about that, you should do it. And it's like, well, I do care about it, and also I'm doing other things. Um, and so that's something that I don't know if that has a place in this talk in particular, but the idea that I can't own it despite my wanting it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to play with that a little bit. And honestly, I think that bad maintenance is worse than non-creation. I don't know. I'm not sure that's. uh, glue dev. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I think I was worried about that for a while, and it's like, no, my talents rest elsewhere. That's fine. um, yeah. Okay, cool. So I think that this actually is kind of an important sub rant, I guess, that I think provides valuable context to the challenge of like open source, right? And this kind of like idea of like, oh, if you care, you should do it. Um, but there's this problem of like caring leads to doing, but then it leads to owning. And like, what does owning look like in a for a project that's like already overrun with requests? Um, Now this ties back through that like through line of um, like I don't know, like OSS maintenance, and like hard to find things, I guess. Direction. And so like again kind of cuts back through the through line of I guess just uh, what was it? Sorry, I had caffeine yesterday and no caffeine today, and so my brain's a little bit fried. Um, so the hard prioritization, kind of, yeah, that like exponential problem, where like the ecosystem is so drastically expanding, that like Storybook has no reasonable capacity to keep up with it at the layer of integration that it has, with the ecosystem right now. But okay, so that's an important point. Both of these are like kind of like important main points, I think, that we're honing in on. Um, okay, so let's see, we got like 15-20 minutes. So the question is like everything needs to end with like why we're giving the talk. And I think ultimately my takeaway is that we need more storybooks. I think frameworks, we should lean 100% on the frameworks. Oh my gosh. That which opts us out, of like it opts us out of like client versus server versus you know SSG versus SSR or SRR, whatever, I can never remember. But it opts us out of all of that because like if the framework can render it, then that is a viable option. It opts us out of what is it, config copying, duplicating. um we can then focus on authoring ergonomics, focus on in framework developer experience. And so this ties through that second was it second environment problem. Yeah. So it opts us out of a lot of things, and yeah, I think that's a good thing. Oh yeah, and then also it like increases reusability of tests without having to go full end to end. end to end. Yeah. Um, Okay, we're gonna build out another category right now. I know we're already like, this is way too much information, and this is correct. I think mostly I'm just kind of like spitballing in order to find through lines, and I think I found like 2 through lines: the second environment problem, OSS maintenance, and whatnot. There's another thing that I think is worth talking about, and it's like different types of testing strategies. Um, so we have, unit tests. I think it's kind of like you have a function, give it some props and whatnot, or arguments, and then test the output. Um, in most cases, like this is like a lot of this is covered by TypeScript, which would be like dev time, I guess. And so you're only left the remainder that you have is only just stuff that is going to be runtime, um, like specifics, I guess. Those are fairly easy things to test. I do prefer, but I think that in most cases, they're better tested through via integrations. Like, you don't necessarily need to write unit tests. You can. You don't necessarily need to write unit tests if you're, for UI, like sub functions of UI, because you're testing those through the UI. Like if there's like a, joining first name and last name or whatever. I think it's a terrible example because this is actually not like real world code for any app that has more than like US based naming schemes, but it is like a very understandable, like a very grokkable example of kind of like what a unit test does and how you would test it naturally through UI. So let's talk about integration for a little bit. Integration tests are really great, but they're also really hard for UI. So like let's talk about like JS doc and what was the jest we're doing, some of the shortcomings there. So I came into a need for Storybook because I was using Playwright, no, not Playwright, Cypress, but I wanted to test colors, like CSS stuff. Now, in Playwright at the time, I don't know how if this has changed or whatnot, but I would actually have to like grab the DOM styles and test specific color values. Or let's call this like style values, right? When really what I want is to just know that it doesn't look different than the last accepted version of it. Forgive all the typing mistakes. So that's like, JSDoc is, fine for that. But then also, like, you're in these places where you're writing very targeted, brittle tests. Or like, let's say like harness aware brittle tests, right? Because I'm only writing them that way because that's how like the framework wants them, versus like, hey, this looks this way, this looks, and now we might have changed it. Like, does it look different? Another area in which, and so then we have, was it end to end? Something that I've identified as end to end is that you have a user modeling problem. This is something that I've experienced like in full stack development in general. but specifically in trying to build out UI. One of the beautiful things about a component is that they're just a, what is it, function of props, right? Now, this is actually really handy because you can go as hard as you want in kind of like building up test cases without some type of, all right, I have my meeting in 15 minutes, so we got to wrap this up. So you can go as hard as you want without having to build up some type of infrastructure around the like you don't have to bring in your user models, I guess, is a way to think about that. You can just give them as props, so you don't have to have like, you know, structures. You don't have to like borrow. You don't have to like think about the auth. You don't have to provide an auth provider. No, like auth provider or like authenticated user. You can just kind of like fully operate at the edge and ask yourself the question, well, if a person has these privileges at the component level, does it show them the right UI that they're expecting, or does it format it differently in the way that we're expecting? And you don't have to bring in, you're isolated from your broader system. And I think that this isolation is valuable. Like this isolation is like one of the things that makes components such a beautiful thing, is because you can make decisions at the edges without any context of the like kind of broader system at play, and they can be correct or like sound. And actually this comes down to like, you know, like uncoupling. I think uncoupling is one of those things that's become so important to me over the years, as maybe this is like a fully different kind of talking point or whatever. And maybe this goes up into stories, maybe like, yeah, let's try that. Concerns, let's see, where did oh no, I didn't call it stories, anecdotes, right? Okay, so I'm going to call this conscious uncoupling, because I thought that blog post was so hilarious when it came out. Conscious uncoupling. That's where it is. I know I heard about it from Goop, but, or like, I don't know, it being, yeah, Goop. There we go. That's the one. Goop. Okay, we can talk about conscious uncoupling. Man, we're gonna bring it way back. This is some like early 2000s callbacks, I think. Yeah, well, 2014. Okay, 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Sex toys in the corner. Yeah, this is the direction that I'm hoping to go. Uh, yeah, so the idea of like uncoupling being one of the most important things that I have, like, one of the things that I'm always fighting for in a system, that things should be able to move independently while still moving forward. You know, and like there's a really interesting like solar system metaphor. And let's see if I can find this. So there's a visual. So if we go to, let's see, GIF of solar system moving. forward. No, no, these are all just static. We all know this. That's a cool one. That's a cool one. I like that. Uh, Also fine, but none of these are the ones that I'm looking for. Let's see. Yes. Okay, we found it. Yes, this is the one. So like this is so cool. This is like, you know, we've seen all of those like kind of like 2D flat you know, Earth moving through the what was it? Universe, galaxy, whatever. But we rarely see this. Like the sun itself is our sun is moving forward, and we're all kind of like trailing around it and following it, and I love that. And so I think that this is possibly a cool metaphor for how I see uncoupling in some of these systems where these things are independently moving, but towards the same goal. If you're still here, is this just insane? Is that too far? Like, does it not make any sense? um, we have to go through the weird parts to get to the parts that actually make sense. So if you're here, I appreciate it. All right, I do need to run to my meeting. I want to thank you. Is Taryn or Tehran? I want to thank you for being here, Anthony, Ben. Thanks for hanging out with me, and even I only wear Lacoste bot. I appreciate you even being here. So yeah, so that's gonna be it. Really excited. Let's see. I think it's tough because they have a force, gravity, in these cases. Yeah. I have to leave in a couple of minutes, but say more about that. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Right? Like you're saying that everything has like its own gravity, and then is that problematic? Like because would independent pieces of an organization not have their own like gravity, I guess, that kind of pulls other pieces into their orbit? I don't know. I know that's very abstract, but yeah, would love to hear further thoughts on that. And if I have to go, you can ping me on Twitter if you're interested enough to do so. Shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna just throw out something. So epicweb. .dev. I think it's epicweb.dev/conf, right? So this is where we're going to be. I think there's going to be some kind of live stream. So even if you don't have a ticket, you can still hang out. And here we are, all these beautiful people, hanging out. This is going to be what is this? Conference day is the 11th. Workshop day is the 10th. I think that's Wednesday and Thursday. So yeah, good stuff. Anyway, yeah, so let's see. I think the force is what you should... Oh, I see what you're talking about. Force is what you should talk about. They have to have the force that pulls them. Okay, cool. Interesting. Okay. I might ping you about that later because I love this. I love talking about this kind of stuff and like finding out metaphors that are like holistic and whatnot. But yeah, so yeah. Okay, cool. We'll talk about that. Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll see you later. Bye.